Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Mike, and it's time for another movie log. What I watched in the last 7 days, starting off with the Godfather Trilogy. I watched all three of them this week. Thanks to my friend Blu-ray Frank once again for suggesting that I find a copy of these. He even offered to send me one because he had an extra copy of the trilogy. So yeah, I watched all these. Now, as I said in a previous video, I had never seen. Well, I never saw parts two and three. I hadn't seen Godfather, the original, since 1972 when it first came out. And there were only two things that I remembered about this movie. One was the sound of Marlon Brando's voice, and the other was the horse head in John Marley's bed. You just don't forget an image like that. I always remember the horse's head in the bed. Wow, what a trick to pull on somebody. So I watched the movie again, and it was all new to me except for those two little details, and I liked it very much. I knew the violence was going to be over the top. I was expecting that, but I did like the story. I got very much caught up in it, and I think because of all the moral ambiguity of the characters, Don Corleone himself and his son Michael, and certainly all the brothers. It was fascinating the way Michael Corleone was pulled into his father's life and his father's business, even though he was extremely reluctant to get involved. But he felt this moral obligation, family obligation to follow in his father's footsteps, take his place. It was very emotional, very very good, very well done. Godfather Part 2 was even better. Now, I had heard other people say that before, that that was better than the original, and I have to agree. I thought it was just absolutely incredible the way they tied in the story of the past. How what was the guy's name? Vito Andolini, the little kid Vito Andolini had to run away from his hometown because they were going to kill him. He had to come to America and make a new start, which he did, became very successful, but he also got very caught up in more moral ambiguity, which became a lifetime. And yeah, it was fascinating. Pacino, De Niro were both really, really good. And Diane Keaton was very good. Diane Keaton, I think this is probably her best dramatic performance. Of all the films that I've seen her in where she was being dramatic, I think this is the best thing that she did. She was, yeah, that scene toward the end where she and her husband are confronting each other, and she tells him that she did not have a miscarriage, but she had an abortion because she wanted to do something so unforgivable that he would just cast her out of his life forever. She wanted to break free. She wanted to end this Sicilian tradition, which was just causing so much ugliness and pain for everyone. She didn't want to bring another Corleone into the world. That was an incredible scene, and to watch Al Pacino's face while she was telling him this, while she was screaming at him and telling him what she did, his face so filled with emotion and conflict and changing from shock into hatred. It was just, wow, it was fascinating. And I loved the scene very close to the end where you had a flashback of all the brothers in their father's house and how they were when they were younger, and you could see once again that Michael was just not wanting to get involved. But then the very last scene where it showed a close-up of his face with all that incredible conflict and emotion, it was an amazing film. That was truly an epic film. So part three, I think Frank said that he thought that The Godfather Part 3 was sort of a comedy. I think that's how he described it. I guess he didn't have a very high opinion of it, but I had heard that it wasn't nearly as good as the other two, so I wasn't necessarily expecting anything great. I think it had some very good things in it, but my overall impression of Part 3 is that it was sort of it seemed like it was a television miniseries version of The Godfather. It was very much lacking in depth and certainly dramatic depth and emotional depth. of the first two, especially the second one. I thought that it was interesting to see the reunion of Michael and his ex-wife Kay, and their sort of finding a way to resolve their issues, at least for a time and in a way, and showing their two children as adults. And yeah, I did like some things about it. I like the way they they interjected the story of the family and their business with the Vatican intrigue and the death of Pope Paul VI and his successor John Paul I, who was very much, I mean, everybody sees him as very much, he would have been a reformist pope had he lived more than 30 days into his pontificate. And of course, most people believe that he was murdered, but there's no proof. It's all hidden in the Vatican archives. It's all secret, and the truth will never come out. But all the stuff about the Vatican Bank and getting rid of all that corruption and how, oh, I mean, it was really interesting. I thought they did a good job with many things in the story. But yeah, it was not, certainly wasn't equal to the first two films. But still, I'm glad I saw it, and I think that it had a lot of good things in it. Okay, so that's The Godfather 1, 2, and 3. Thank you, Frank, once again. I'm very glad that you challenged me to see these. Okay, so next up, I watched this Woody Allen film called Cassandra's Dream, starring Ewan McGregor. Let's see, Colin Farrell, Tom Wilkinson, Haley Atwell, Sally Hawkins. McGregor and Farrell played two brothers, working class brothers, and Cassandra's Dream is the name of a boat that they own, which they kind of use as a refuge to get away from their conflicted family life with their parents who bicker with each other. And both of these young men want very good things in their lives, and they don't really know how to get them, and they get involved in a shady scheme with their uncle, actually played by Tom Wilkinson, who has always been sort of the bright star of the family because he's been very successful, he's been very rich, he's traveled all over the world, and he's the brother of the mother of these two guys, and she just worships her brother and always puts him up as just this ideal person. Well, it turns out to be very, very dark. And this is Woody Allen in one of his dark modes. If you want to think about Crimes and Misdemeanors and Match Point and Irrational Man with Joaquin Phoenix, this is very much in that same vein, although not nearly as well constructed as all those, especially as Match Point and Crimes and Misdemeanors, which are masterpieces. But it's still worth watching. I'm very glad that I saw it. Okay, next up is a film that I picked up at Dollar Tree. Knew nothing about it. It's called Re-Alive. Don't know any of these actors in here, except that one of the actresses happens to be a woman named Una Chaplin. She's the daughter of Geraldine Chaplin, which means she's the granddaughter of Charlie Chaplin. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting point. It's kind of a science fiction story about this young man who at the age of 32 finds out that he has a terminal disease. He only has about a year to live. But there's a program that allows people to freeze their bodies in the hope of possible resurrection at some point. And the only thing is you have to commit suicide while your body is still relatively healthy. And so you have to take your own life. So anyway, he's resurrected 60 years later, and it shows his time of trying to readjust to being alive again. It gets very complicated. It has all the ambiance of a science fiction film, very good sets, and costumes and all that. The whole atmosphere of being in a futuristic world. But it's really a very human story. I actually liked it. Not bad for $1. Next up is an Ethan Hawke film that I picked up at Big Lots. Good Kill, from 2014, I believe. Ethan Hawke plays an army major who at one time was a pilot in one of the Middle Eastern wars. Now he is stationed at a military establishment and outside of Las Vegas, and he's involved in drone warfare. So basically, he's just playing a big video game, and he's actually killing people in Afghanistan, and he is finding it increasingly difficult to reconcile what he is doing, killing people in that way, in such an impersonal atmosphere, and watching people die, and especially some of the people who are collateral damage, like children and innocent people who just happen to be in the area. It's really starting to weigh on his mind. January Jones plays his wife. They're having a very conflicted marriage, partly because of what he's going through, that it's causing so much emotion inside of him that he can't talk about. And Zoe Kravitz plays a young military officer who is assigned to be trained by him. So they sort of get involved, and they not romantically, but they both have the same conflicting feelings. Very good performance by Ethan Hawke. Speaking of Ethan Hawke, since my life is turning into an Ethan Hawke film festival, I picked this up at Barnes & Noble. I never even knew it existed. It's a horror film called Sinister. He stars as a writer of true crime stories, and he moves his family, his wife, and their two small children, a boy and a girl, to this house in a new town where he says, we're here to investigate a crime that happened in this town. He's trying to get a successful book going, because he's had a lot of trouble with his writing in the past, and he's very frustrated, and he wants to make money for his family, and he gets involved in the story. What he doesn't tell his wife and family is that the house that they're moving into is actually the house where this horrifying crime happened. An entire family was killed, and so before the wife finds out what happens, it's almost too late, and all kinds of really creepy things go on. A lot of this has been done before. It's done very well in this film, and of course, I probably would never watch this if it happened to Ethan Hawke, but he's very, very good, as he is in everything that he does. Now, the way they make modern horror films, in the old days, you would have the monster coming around, wreaking havoc and carrying off beautiful women and killing people and all this stuff. And then there would be a conclusion, and the monster would be destroyed or thrown into a pit or something, and you would say the end and everything was fine. Not anymore. In this cynical age, this dark age we live in, nothing goes well at the end of this film. I'm not going to give anything away, but it's really disturbing. But I will say that even though there are a lot of gruesome images and gruesome scenes, there's really very little violence and bloodshed, which for me was a plus. I was quite happy, so no complaints there. Good movie. After all this seriousness, I wanted some comedy in my life, so I decided to rewatch Bob Hope and Dorothy Lamour in My Favorite Brunette from the 1940s, which was really funny. I hadn't seen this for a very long time, and I didn't remember a lot of things about it. Peter Lorre is in this. Just a really fun movie. Bob Hope and Dorothy Lamour. She even sings a song. Next up, I decided to rewatch this classic film noir, Murder My Sweet, from 1944. Dick Powell, Claire Trevor, Anne Shirley. We also have people like, let's see, Esther Howard is in it. Who are some of these? Otto Kruger is in it. Let's see, who are some of these other actors? Well, I guess those are the ones I remember. Directed by Edward Dimitri, who directed a lot of film noirs, and RKO. Terrific film based on Raymond Chandler's Farewell, My Lovely. And this was the first film, I'm pretty sure, where Dick Powell did a dramatic performance after making all those classic musicals back in the 1930s at Warner Brothers as a crooner. He had a beautiful voice, so he went serious in this. Yeah, very good movie. And after that, I decided to watch the first adaptation of Farewell, My Lovely in this package of the Falcon series. And the third movie in the Falcon series is called The Falcon Takes Over. And that is actually based on Farewell, My Lovely. They kept a lot of things, a lot of the names of the characters, but they changed a lot of things as well, because all of these Falcon stories, they're little mysteries, but they're also filled with a lot of comedy, and they're only about 75 or 80 minutes long, and very tongue-in-cheek, but with a lot of great atmosphere and almost sort of like film noir cinematography in a lot of the scenes, but you know, definitely done for a more lighthearted approach. This has, of course, George Sanders. Let's see, Lynn Barry is in it. She was a very popular actress at 20th Century Fox. We have Ward Bond played in it, and Anne Revere, Turhan Bey. Very good movie, a lot of fun. So that's my week. Thank you for watching, and I will hopefully keep this going every week after this. Let me know if you've seen any of these films, and comments are always welcome. Thank you for watching.